Hey, students and fellow scientists. We do have this Mount Graham Squirrel assessment. It is going to be a lab grade to hopefully help boost up that score that I know everyone's been so worried about. And I just want to go through it with you guys. So I know it looks like a lot of reading, a lot of big words in the beginning. So I will read through it. I'll go through the directions and I'm going to break it down for you on what we got to do. So it is about Mount Graham squirrels. Again, this is another real life squirrel population out in Arizona. So here's our introduction. The Mount Graham red squirrel, red squirrel, is an endangered red squirrel subspecies that is native to the Pinaleno, mountains in southeastern Arizona. Population for these squirrels is shown in the attached data table. We are going to use the information along with the background research to determine population trends for the red squirrel. We will also be investigating whether the red squirrel habitat is declining and what natural or human-caused disturbances may be responsible for fluctuations in the red squirrel population. Based on our investigation, we will decide whether we think the Mount Graham red squirrel is resistant or resilient to disturbances. So the question we are investigating is, how are the causes of habitat decline affecting the red squirrel population? So remember, our independent variable goes between how does and affect. So the independent variable is the causes of habitat decline, and our dependent variable, what we're measuring, is after the word affect, and it is the red squirrel population. Okay, so Ms. Turner and I did some research and we came up with this background information. This used to be a research project, but just to time constraints and moving virtually, we just thought it would be easier to just share the information that we had other students gather in the past years. So this is, again, all true. It is factual information, and it is all background information about this red squirrel. So Mount Graham squirrels are incredibly sensitive to environmental changes like temperatures and sound. These squirrels are often prey to predators that fly above the forest, such as hawks. The lives of the squirrels are very short, about 3 years in the wild. They reproduce once or sometimes twice per year. A fierce protector of their territory and its food storage, the Mount Graham red squirrel will attack and even kill other red squirrels that come into its domain. So one of the biggest challenges for the squirrels are insects such as bark beetles that weaken pine trees, and the squirrels rely on these pine trees. The bark beetle has killed 85% of the trees that the Mount Graham squirrels use as their habitat. Another challenge that the Mount Graham squirrel faces is competition from an invasive squirrel, or the Abert squirrel. The Abert squirrel uses the same food source and shelter as the Mount Graham squirrel and thus competes with them for food and shelter or space, like habitat. Then in 2017, there was a large wildfire called the Fry Fire. This fire resulted in an estimate of only 35 squirrels surviving. This is a significant decrease from the 252 squirrels estimated in 2016. Evidence of the Fry Fire was observed in 95% of the surveyed locations. 80% showed at least some habitat loss, and 44% was completely burned. So out of everywhere that the squirrel lived, 95% of the locations where they were finding the Mount Graham red squirrel had been burned by this Fry Fire. So what you're going to do is you're going to take all this information that I just gave you and what we learned from the moose and the wolf populations, and you're going to apply it to what is happening with these Mount Graham red squirrels. So here's the data. It kind of does go into 2 pages just from how we formatted it. But remember, when you make a graph, you're going to need to put all this data into a Google Sheet. So please, please, please listen to this, and do not put it into a Google Sheet just like this. You're going to want to copy one row at a time. If you do all 3 columns or groups just how it is, you're not going to get your line graph that you want. You're going to come up with 3 bars, and you're going to come up with a whole bunch of weird things, and it's just, we don't want that. So do one row at a time, copy and paste into your sheet. Then if you don't remember how to make a graph from Google Sheets, there's like 3 videos out there on how to make it. It's in our Google office hours. It's also written out in our classroom. So please use your resources and remind yourself on how to make a graph. It's not going to go away. I promise you this. In all your science classes moving forward, you're going to be making graphs on Google Sheets. Especially in this class, we're not going to stop asking you to do it. So just take the time, learn how to do it, remind yourself. All right, so after you make a graph, you're going to put your graph here. And graphing the squirrel data is going to be about 5 points itself. So inserting your graph here, that would be the 5 points. Then before you have the conclusion, you do have 3 analysis questions. So you need to explain what trends the graph is showing. So we've asked you that about the moose and the wolf. What trends are you seeing? What's going on? Is it fluctuating? That's a good word. Is it staying stable? What's happening? Then number 2 says, explain why your graph is fluctuating. Think of what we're doing with the moose and the wolves again. If you don't think it's fluctuating, explain why it's not. And then number 3 is cite information from the background to support why the population changed. So this means figure out what was happening to the squirrel's habitat to cause these changes you're seeing in their population. Be specific with your data, like use years. Don't just say there was a fire. When was the fire? Don't just say they compete for habitat. Tell me why, like say they're fiercely territorial or whatever information you got from that background that I read to you, put it here in number 3. Then, of course, we have our CER. And again, I'm going to be honest. I don't really know what happened, you guys, when we first taught this back in September. You guys were killing it. It was some of the best first CERs I have ever read. This is my 6th year teaching CER. You guys were getting it. It was amazing. And then, I don't know, we kind of went into population dynamics and unity and diversity, and it kind of went, and now you guys seem to have forgotten how to write CERs. So I gave you guys some leading, guiding questions or thoughts. So your question again is, how are the causes of habitat decline affecting the red squirrel population? So your claim must answer the question. Don't just tell me there was a fire. That does not answer my question. The question is, how are the causes of habitat decline affecting the squirrel population? So you could say something about there was a fire or multiple things that affected the red squirrel population. That would be an answer to that question. Or you can even tell me how it's affecting the red squirrel population. It's declining, it's increasing, it's fluctuating. You need to tell me. You don't need to say because though. Remember, it's just one sentence. Answer the question. Your evidence. This is where you need to give data and numbers. Again, it can be bullet pointed. I would say 3 to 4 bullet points is good. You would get your 4 points. But do not just say they died. When did they die? How did they die? How many died? What was the decrease? What did they start at? What did they end at? So you need to kind of explain in detail with numbers, quantitative evidence to prove your claim. And reasoning, a lot of you guys are just concluding. You're just saying that's why the squirrels died. Well, that's not enough information. You need to restate your claim. You can even copy and paste it. That is perfect. So just restate your claim. Remember, add in some of that quantitative evidence. You don't need to add it all, but you do need to support or bolster your claim. You need to add in some of the evidence that you gave me previously that proves what you're saying is true. Then you're going to explain why this happened using scientific concepts or models. So the model that we taught you in this unit was that graph that had an increase. That meant that there were more births during that time. And then when it was a decrease, there were more deaths during that time. You can literally explain that model using your squirrel data, and that would be perfect. And then you conclude, you say, overall, in conclusion, this is why. All right, so I hope that helped you all. I know it was kind of a lot of information. Obviously, skim and pause me as you want, but Yeah, I know you guys can all do this. It's just applying the same concepts of the wolf and the moose to a new population, squirrels. So we're seeing if you can use the model that we taught you and apply it in a new way, in a new situation. So good luck. You'll all do great. And I can't wait to read what you guys come up with.